It's Jim Fisher, aka The Beat, with This Week Community News, where we're continuing our tour of Central Ohio Spring High School musical productions. This week we're at New Albany High School, where Elliot Lambert is directing Urinetown. Thanks for being with us, Mr.
Cool,
Lambert.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about your production of Urinetown.
So, with Urinetown, it's a satire, and it's a satire on authority, big business, pretty much issues that are facing our society currently, but it's also a parody of musicals. So if you're a big fan of musical theater, I think you'll really enjoy the show because it has some homages and it pokes fun at other musicals like West Side Story, Fiddler on the Roof, and it's just a lot of fun. Don't let the title distract you from coming to see the show because it's a lot of fun.
Right, that's the key, right? People are going to have fun in the theater even though there are some themes that are serious.
Right, exactly. So yeah, it does touch upon some fairly serious issues, but overall it's a play that's meant to make you laugh, but also make you think a little bit. And maybe you're thinking, why am I laughing at this point in time? But it's a lot of fun. It's a great show.
And the satire on musicals extends to the songs themselves.
Yes, yeah, just the way the songs are written. There's a piece at the end of the first act, the Act 1 finale, that's very reminiscent of Tonight Tonight from West Side Story, where you have the two gangs and then all the other characters converging in that particular musical. It's very similar in this, where you have the UGC, the authority figures, and then the poor rebels kind of converging in this huge cataclysm at the end of the first act.
Okay. And despite the fact that there are common themes in musical theater that this is sort of poking fun at a little bit, it's sort of an off the beaten path, but it's sort of an off the wall show in and of itself. Talk about how your kids have sort of taken to that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's involved a lot of humor, and they've had to look at it from a very different vantage point. But typically what we do is we start being somewhat serious so they can actually think about their characters and who their characters are, and then we add that comedy layer on top of it. And so they've been able to physicalize a lot more and really get into their roles, which has been a lot of fun. And then just conceptually, in terms of what I'm doing with the show, I'm kind of styling it retro future. You know, because a lot of times when you see Urinetown, it's set in kind of this 20s, 30s-ish era, but here we're doing kind of a future. So this essentially could happen to us, that we could be in a drought like this. So I want the audience to look at it from that regard as well.
Sure. And your cast and your crew, just talk about the hard work that they put into the show.
Oh, absolutely. We have been in rehearsal since the end of February, and we have put hours and hours and hours of work into it, and the students love it, they enjoy it, they really get into it, but there's so much that goes into pulling a musical together, especially because you have so many spinning plates going at once. And the kids really embrace it. They get into the dancing, they get into the singing, they love the acting portion of it, and then of course all the technical elements that go along with it.
Urinetown is really, well, the whole premise of the play is that the water's all dried up and someone has to manage it, and so the UGC comes in and they provide a solution. But in doing so, they have to oppress people to maintain the status quo of preserving the water. But that's really just more of a device to use to make fun of just the whole theater genre in general, the whole musical format itself as a medium.
The premise is purposefully really absurd. You're in good company is the name of the corporation. It's a pun, and a lot of the show is designed to ridicule musical theater in a fun way, not in a malicious way. It is very much a satire on top of that on wastefulness, and we talked about, what else we talked about? Rebellion.
Wastefulness, rebellion, just kind of the fact that people are ignoring the issues going on right now. So in the show there has been a drought going on for 20 years, and that's why the water's all dried up, and that's why we're kind of in a riot. And it's just kind of a build for that.
It has sort of like a dark humor to it a little bit sometimes, but some of the things are just hysterical. But then at the end of the show, it's like, oh, after all the laughs are done, oh, and then you kind of have this thought, oh, that actually had a really good message to it, and I should probably listen to it. It's like, I'm laughing, but I shouldn't be laughing, but I'm still laughing, kind of thing.
It's still gonna happen.
Yeah.
The jokes too are kind of sophisticated. All the humor in the show comes from the characters and the characters are written to be really over-exaggerated. Like Ethan's character, the protagonist, Bobby Strong, is sort of almost a
Caricature.
he is a character, but he's almost cartoon-like in his characterization. He's so devoted to freedom to the point where it's funny. Our other lead, Josh, who plays Cladwell, the villain, is so evil that it's funny. It's just there. It's all, the whole show deals in extremes.
Now, your kids probably are, at least made themselves familiar with the show, at least after you announced it, but maybe because there aren't songs that are part of the pop culture canon. Talk about teaching the songs from sort of a blank slate perspective as opposed to maybe some other shows where
Sure.
everyone knows the songs going in.
Well, the great thing about this show is I actually teach it in one of my classes, one of my
Okay.
drama classes, because it also pokes fun at dramatic structure. There's a song at the very beginning called Too Much Exposition. And so the characters are breaking the fourth wall, they're talking to the audience, and they're talking about the fact that nothing kills a show like too much exposition when you spend too much time setting everything up.
Sure.
So it's a show that we study, so they were actually familiar with a lot of the songs. And a good thing about it is because it kind of lampoons so many other musicals that they pick up on what they're poking fun at throughout the show. So that certainly helped them with the music.
So there's a lot of fun musical numbers in Urinetown, and it mocks, like it kind of it
Satirizes?
Satirizes, there we go. It satirizes the modern, like the American musical. And so each individual song is mocking, like making fun of a specific song in a different musical. So it's kind of interesting. So if you really know your stuff, you can kind of pick out what song goes with what other song in a different musical. It's kind of cool.